Order. Everybody that's here always knows my spiel, so I'm going to go right into agenda item number 2, which is our public comments. I have 2 cards. Is there any more? Okay, we'll start with Kirsten.
I won't mess yourself by eyes. My picture was working. All right. Good evening. Month after month, I've come before you asking for transparency, accountability, and fiscal responsibility, and tonight is no different. After reviewing tonight's agenda, I'm disappointed you are not discussing the recent state funding decision, as it will significantly impact the 24-25 budget, an operating budget that starts the school year already in a deficit. I've heard you say we are the people business. I get that. But we are also in the business of educating children. Tonight, I see that you're requesting contract renewals and a raise. I will remind you that last month you shared that our district has a $2.8 million operating deficit. Where is the fiscal responsibility? You have no problem asking teachers and student interfacing support staff to make or take concessions, even reducing teachers' support staff headcount. Yet, as our student population decreases, our upper management has increased. As you right-size our district, right-size the administration team, and balance the budget, being mindful of our fund balance before you ask for a raise. In addition, tonight's study session format, you changed it to a special meeting, so you can present this contract, raise proposal, vote on it in the middle of summer. This screams lack of transparency. The community, if looking for it, would have learned this proposal only yesterday. This doesn't give the community time to digest and provide feedback. The board knows better and needs to do better. Have meaningful dialogue tonight at the board table. Table the vote until the next regular meeting. Thank you.
Christian?
Good evening. My speech is about how much longer.
About what?
How much longer? How much longer will we be sitting there with poker faces? And how much longer will we be wasting our money on demolition plans? And how much longer will you not give us a rational explanation for the demolition plans? And how much longer will it take to tell us why? What are you afraid of? How much longer will you be non-transparent, and how much longer will you not be, or will you lack public integrity? How much longer will you deny the fact that demolition makes no sense? How much longer will you deny that it makes sense to sell Roosevelt to help reduce the budget deficit? How much longer will you operate without a clear plan to solve your deficit problem? How much longer do our policymakers and our reputable cultural organizations and legal firms need to write letters saying that West Bloomfield School District is making decisions that make no sense? How much longer are you going to waste taxpayers' money by having a highly paid lawyer, Mr. Mullins, review and make copies of very ordinary documents available under FOIA requested by concerned residents? How much longer are you going to allow the abatement contractor, who is known for MIOSA violations and was the low bidder? How much longer are you going to allow the abatement contractor to cut corners and only remove 17% of the asbestos prior to demolition? Don't you know that 2,900 residents in Kiko Harbor, including children, are living within the radius of a half a mile from Roosevelt? They will breathe in any asbestos fiber that is allowed to escape Roosevelt. And if it is not breathed in, it will pollute Sylvan and Cass Lakes. Why are your main contractors, TMP and AUK, the authors of the abatement and demolition specifications, not responding with a yes or no to my simple question as to whether they were supporting Arch's specifications for abatement? What the hell is going on? Are they in cahoots with you? Why are you going to turn the tide? When are you going to turn the tide to stop the West Bloomfield Board of Education from becoming a laughing stock? Why haven't you committed to follow environmental Great Lakes and Energy's Eagles advice to abate the entire second and third floor of Roosevelt? The entire second and third floor. The Attorney General is keeping an eye,
Thank you.
and so is Environmental Services, and so are the residents of Eagle Harbor. Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item 3 is our community education early childhood salary schedules approval. Mr. Ayers,
The news left over.
Development Management, or Trustee?
You? Thank you very much. Board members, as you know, employees in our community education department perform very vital work in our early childhood programs, also in our adult education English language development program. And as you know also, they are not represented by a collective bargaining agreement. So over the past couple of months, we've been talking about those bargaining agreements with our employees for the coming wage reopeners. It is customary in our districts, for sure since I worked here, that we generally wait for those agreements to settle, and then we make a recommendation based on those agreements in terms of our non-represented employees. So that's what you have before you this evening, is a recommendation for our community education department based on the 5 bargaining units that have now completed their bargain. Our wage recommendation is for community ed employees to have step advancement for any eligible employees that are on steps, as we like to say, and a 2% off schedule payment for employees at the top step to be made in one lump sum payment on the first pay increase.
Motion.
I move to approve the 2024-2025 community education salary schedule and wage recommendation for inclusion.
Carol. The motion to approve the community ed salary schedule and wage recommendation for inclusion 3 is moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments?
Just want to make a comment, and I appreciate the hard work that went into these negotiations. These salaries are still so low. We are lucky to be able to fill these positions because these people could be working in McDonald's and making more money starting to pay. Every time I see this, I'm just more shocked. So, I am gonna support this, right? Because these are people that are in front of our kids.
Committees? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Number 4 on our agenda is our lunchroom program monitors and crossing guard salary schedule approval. Mr. Whitney.
Our second recommendation this evening in terms of salaries is for lunchroom playground monitors and crossing guards. They are also not represented by a collective bargaining agreement. It is the very, very similar situation that we wait for those bargaining agreements to settle, and then we bring you a recommendation that is commensurate with those units. Our recommendation for the lunchroom playground monitors and crossing guards is a 2% off schedule payment this time, paid in one lump sum on the first pay in December. That might be a little bit of a unique recommendation. It's not typically the way that we've recommended for this group, but we've made that recommendation to make sure that our regular rate of pay for this group is aligned with our paraeducator units. So if you remember, I'm for sure when I started here, they were represented by the paraeducator unit. They are no longer there, and it is important, in my opinion, that we keep an eye very closely on how those wage schedules align. And so that's why you have this recommendation before you tonight.
I move to approve an off-schedule payment of 2% for lunchroom, playground monitors, and crossing guards to be paid in one lump sum on the first day of the year closure 4.
Motion to approve the off-schedule payments of 2% for lunchroom, playground monitors, and crossing guards for enclosure 4 has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that?
just say
Thank you
ditto.
for that clarification.
Okay.
Did I just say ditto?
Yeah.
Or I said cool.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 5 on our agenda is individual contracts. Mr. Eric Whitney will outline the festival.
All right, finally, this evening, our last group of employees that are not represented by a bargaining unit are employees that are on individual employment contracts. We have 18 employees that fall in this group, 17 plus the superintendent. It is again, the same customary practice that we've had in the district in years past, that we would wait for those contracts to settle and bring a recommendation that is commensurate with those bargaining units for those non-represented employees. So you have in your packet the individual employment contracts and the recommendation that those salary increase of a 2% are included in that, those contracts.
Motion. Art?
Move to approve the individual employee contracts for all these people.
Yeah, read it.
Want to read all of them?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Tanya Bezzi, Eric Whitney, Deanna Rockman, James Stottlemyre, Scott Long, Nancy Hoover, Rebecca Fannin, Selma James, Sylvia McCoy, Theodore Stinson, Andrea Frank, Amy Frazier, Carla Jones, Dawn Hanford, Sarah McDowell, Emily Petrakis, Elizabeth Bain, and Carly Perry for Budget 5.
Have a second. Motion to approve the 18 individual contracts, which are Danya Bazey, Eric Whitney, Robin Radke, James Stottlemyre, Scott Long, Nancy Hoover, Rebecca Fannin, Sonia James, Sylvia McCoy, Ted Stinson, Andrea Frank, Amy Frazier, Carla Jones, Dawn Hanford, Sarah McDowell, Shannon Marcus, Elizabeth Bain, and Carly Perry. Current budget 5 is being moved and seconded. Are there any additional questions or comments?
So on Friday, I sent an email to superintendent asking to have these split apart. The people that are in front of students versus the people that are, and that was not, granted clearly. I cannot support, and I want to apologize to the staff members that are present that are in front of students, because you're being caught in the crossfire of this. But we have, even after the budget, the state budget, we still are more than $2 million on the spending deficit this year. Our central administration in particular is larger than it has been in my 13 years on this board. And we have a declining student population. And until I see, this is 4th, 5th, I can't count how many times I've asked, what's your plan to address the spending deficit and to balance the budget? And I'm not getting an answer. And for those reasons, I cannot support this motion, and I cannot approve any contract extensions or raises at this time.
All those in favor say aye.
Oh.
Maybe you didn't do it.
Oh, you know what, the thing about it is, I do want a plan, I want to see a plan, I would like to see these in the future, broken up between, again, I call them, our decision makers, our leaders, our decision makers, broken up between those that support those leaders and decision makers, because it's important, to kind of take a look at the salaries and of those that are making decisions for the district versus those that are supporting those that are making the decisions. So I don't think that they should be, as Carol said, caught in the crossfires or hairs of the decision making. I do think we need a plan. I think that, again, as we face our deficit, again, this approval are the highest salaries that we have in the district. So when we talk about a 2% or 4% on top of those things, I'd like to know what the plan is. And is everyone, again, our leaders more so than those support staff, are they prepared for what the decision will be to bring us in line for budget? So I can't support it as it stands because our leaders are tied us in, and I think that they should be taken to the side, so that's my thought.
All Alright, so I have Julie, and then Nick, then Art.
I just want to thank everybody in the school district, including everybody here, who are, having their contracts renewed and taking a 2-3% raise. The cost of living year over year actually is 3.2. Therefore, if you take a 2% or even a 3% raise, you're actually not up to par with cost of living. So it's really like it's considered a raise, I understand that, but it's really like an adjustment for cost of living, and we're not even there. So I'm not just talking about the individuals that you guys are pulling out, but everybody in the school district. I just want to recognize that all of these contracts are at that level, because I feel everybody in the school district understands where we're at, and they're all doing what they can and doing their part as a team to try to bring us in. I know we have come considerably closer to addressing it without having to name positions, because positions in the school district is names, they're human beings. We know exactly who we're talking about. If I name a title that's we're gonna cut because we have to reach the budget, what we're talking about is a specific individual. And corporations, nor does public entities like a school district, should you post a list of potential layoffs just in case we don't make a number. Nobody wants to live in that environment, so I understand that. I know you have a plan in place, but I appreciate not listing it out as detailed to title levels, because that is a human being, and those people are part of our family and part of our district, and I want everybody to feel secure in their positions here. And yeah, so I would just like to thank all the hard work that went into these negotiations, and everybody on the faculty and staff who are accepting these. So
I too would like to thank everyone who participated in the negotiations, especially Mr. Whitney there. But I too also would like to see coming forward to have a little breakup. 18 people of our higher paid employees, there's gotta be a way of breaking that up a little bit. And I'm gonna support this, but in the future, I'd like to see it broken up a little bit smaller groups somehow.
Very briefly, in addition to Mr. Whitney, I want to thank Johanna too. She was very integral in the negotiations that were taking part. Regarding the raise for these 18 people, the 2% and the conditional 1% is very much in line with what the other contracts and the non-represented people are being given. I think that's fair. And in terms of addressing the declining enrollment and impact on the budget, attrition is the ideal way of handling that, which takes a few years. We're already into that few-year process already. It's gonna take a couple more years, I'm sure. And we may not get all the way there through attrition, but that's the approach. I mean, that's what we're trying to take advantage of. So again, I am comfortable that administration has this well in hand. I will be supporting this. I understand the concern of the other commissioners. You know, obviously, we want to get to a balanced budget sooner rather than later. But I just want to be real careful that we're not impacting our staff and our students unnecessarily.
Just a quick follow-up. So my issue is really about the contract extensions for people that still have time on their contract. It ties your hands. You are tying your hands. And some of these contracts, that's why I wanted them split. Some of these contracts are still have another full year on them already. That's my concern, is don't tie your hands. When you don't, again, Julie seems to know that there's some plan in place, but the board has not heard it yet. At least I haven't heard it.
it's the same one Art just mentioned.
Well,
And she mentioned to told us numerous times.
she's
that
not,
that's
I
the
have
approach
not,
they're
I have
taking.
not seen a plan. How am I going to balance the budget over what period of time? You know, what's gonna happen? And again, these are things that the board should be advised to do. And for those reasons, and again, I apologize to the staff, because I never wanna hurt staff, these are people. And I respect the work that everybody does here, but, again, we have to be fiscally responsible. And you can't keep spending what you're spending.
Stacy, I've been looking at it really patiently, so there's, again, I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So we started the 23-24 school year with a $7 million deficit. We said it was a conservative budget, right? Let's say it was $5 million. I can't wait for the audit this year to show that we will either be break even or maybe eat into fund balance $500,000. That adjustment was made all throughout the school year without causing chaos, without attacking our staff, without gutting programs. It was done in a systematic, thoughtful way based on the people that we've hired to do the job. So I can't wait for the 23-24 audit to come true. That shows that we were able to make those adjustments through attrition in a really succinct way. With regards to your email, which you referenced it, I would rather do this not at a board meeting. I offered you to call me anytime over the weekend, anytime on Monday. I'm always available 24/7. I was on vacation with my family. I didn't miss one. My calls were forwarded from my office to my trip with, I didn't miss one phone call. I took calls at 3 a.m., 5 a.m., there's a 6-hour time difference. I didn't miss one email in that course of the week. So I'm accessible anytime that the board needs to ask questions. So I wanna again say that. In terms of the contract, I just wanna clarify one thing. The way that we're doing it is consistent with the way that the district has done it in the past, I don't know, 5 years. As soon as all the bargaining groups' contracts have been settled, which there's 5, we take an average that says, on average, the teacher raise was 3.84%. So our teachers on average are getting about a 3.84% raise. Okay, that's on average. We take those numbers and we adjust the individual contracts to make sure that they're in line with those. And then we don't bring it to the board until all of our contracts have been settled. So we let all of our other groups go ahead, and there's a board member that sits on every one of those 5 negotiating teams. So the board is aware of what was settled. If this wasn't in line with it, I would, again, take the critique. Like if there was 4%, 5%, it's a 2% raise, not 3, not 4, it's 2. So again, we address it in a way that's consistent here. Again, I understand that central office, there's some misinformation that central office has expanded. We've reduced central office positions as well. We've reduced the curriculum position. We've reduced the business office position. We've reduced positions throughout the 2 years. But again, in a way that doesn't make a splash, that doesn't impact students. We reallocate workloads so that we do that. We did pass a $148 million bond. And so some of that work now is going to be invested in building 2 new buildings. The workload changes over time, but through attrition, we'll be able to address some of those things. I agree with you, there's still more work to be done in terms of the budget so that we can continue to invest dollars into the thing. But separating these contracts, all of these contracts are individual. They're all being administered, consistently with all members. Not one, the superintendent isn't getting more than another employee, or another employee isn't getting more. But the thing that's key is a district that wants administrators to work on a 1-year contract is not the best environment. It's not best for our people, and wouldn't ask my assistant suits or my executive directors to work. It's like in the NFL, you call like a lame duck year. That doesn't feel good. Now, if there's budgetary constraints that causes, like say things get worse quickly, there's always a clause out in terms of layoffs. That doesn't matter if you have 3 years left on your contract or 4. If the district has to make difficult financial decisions, then those things will happen. I have went through with finance committee lists of reductions that we've made throughout the year so that we have a filter to go through those. We have shared with the board those positions that we have eliminated over the year. Those discussions, unfortunately, are going to continue. Yes, and that's the worst part of the job, but it's what we're hired to do. So I understand we're not at the end yet in terms of addressing all of them, but I don't think this 2% is what's going to cause the it's not gonna contribute to the downfall of the district.
I just have something to say in regards to what you just said. From the standpoint of, again, the plan, and it's out there, and you talked about cuts and things like that, I think my only concern is we haven't seen it. Now, again, there may be some talk in Vision and Finance Committee, I'm hearing the treasurer say she hasn't seen it, so that concerns me. So from the standpoint of, it's not what you do, it's just that it just hasn't been communicated. So it's not, work your job. I mean, all you guys work your jobs, and do a good job working your job. What is that? And it doesn't have to be where we go in and say it's that person and that person. That's what a financial plan is. But it's to be communicated, and this is the board, because you will come back to the board and want us to approve, and if something happens, you say, well, the board approved it. Well, I don't wanna approve it. I don't wanna approve it, I don't know what it is. Because that's saying that I should just approve it in the dark. And I don't wanna do that. I think that me as a board member, and I think this board is quite intelligent enough to go ahead on and look at some plans and say, hey, it's good, bad, or different, or we understand. Or we may disagree, but hey, you're running a district, but we don't have a plan. And no matter what, you keep saying it's out there, I'm just saying, hey, just put something together, and so we can see it, and then put some numbers around it. It's not many people, it's not many positions, put a plan together, so we can see it, and put some numbers around it, so we can see how we're going to drill down to that number. If it's attrition, it's attrition. It doesn't have to have names, just tell us what it is, and I haven't seen that.
It's attrition. I guess we'll just agree to it. It's attrition. I understand that's what you feel, but those were shared at finance, which, people were at. And again, I hear you, there's a
I
plan.
haven't seen it. And it has to come
I
from
think you're
finance
looking
committee
at
too.
programs. I'm just gonna say, I hear you, I appreciate your feedback,
And then the last thing is that because these 18 are together, I mean, there's different levels of work. Cabinet does make decisions, so we're talking about a group of decision makers with those that support those decision makers. Those are two different employees. So no, they shouldn't be grouped together as far as how you bring them to us, because they're doing different work for the district, very different work. So again, I mean, hey, stand strong. The cabinet members make those decisions, put those people out, those that don't, put them separate. But to have them grouped together and not, take them apart, it just doesn't seem like that's transparency to me either. So let's just talk about it, hey, this is the group that makes all the decisions in the district, these are the people that support those people, because maybe the people that support the decision makers should get more than 2%. And maybe those that are making those decisions should get 1.5%. I'm not sure, but to group them together, it doesn't allow us to do that. It doesn't allow us to see.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
That was you too, right?
That was an old meeting, so.
So motion passes 5-2. Agenda item number 6. Oh, and thank you, Mr. Whitney. We have one more that should be ready by the 19th to come to the board.
Yes.
It's in the process. It will be
Yes.
WBHS. So that when that is ready, we'll.
We have a tentative
Or
agreement,
hopefully
yeah.
it'll be by the 19th.
We should be well on track. It's a very good timeline, so I don't see any concerns.
Okay, so thank you, and thank you for all the work that's gone into those. Agenda item number 6 is our contract purchase approval assistance to Scott Warren. Is the festival vestibule. Scott.
Good evening, how's it going?
Review.
Good. Woke up and it was August. Look at that. My goodness. Where did July go? My goodness.
That's what the kids are wondering.
I don't know, I think my son's ready to go back. Or if he's not ready, I'm ready for him to go back.
I think it's probably the latter.
Right.
Yeah, probably. I love him to death. Well, thank you for having me this evening. I have a series of brief presentations regarding some purchase approvals for needed curriculum materials. The first of which is the ECA science materials for elementary and middle school. This was originally approved and implemented in 2018 and 19 in conjunction with the NGSS standards that were released. For K through 5, these ECA supply materials are needed for our FOSS kits, the K through 5 science resource, which is really all about hands-on phenomena, science-based resources. Each grade level has 3 rotations. Teachers share those kits with a grade level partner. Currently, ECA, what they do is they deliver those kits to our buildings and they pick them up and bring them back. So when the teachers are done, they take those kits, they reorganize them, they replenish them, they send them back to the building when they're finished. I will say, in the upcoming contract that we have for them, the cost is going to be significantly reduced in year 2 because we've decided to take ECA out of the equation when it comes to packaging, sorting, organizing them, and we're going to do that at the building level. So they're just going to supply us with the materials that we need each year, and we're going to take care of it at the building level. It's going to save us about $35,000. So that's good. Yeah, at the middle school, we're going to do the same thing. Again, this is for our MyStar Science resource, which lines up with NGSS standards as well. These materials are vetted and custom ordered for the middle school staff. It allows for really great labs and unique hands-on opportunities for our teachers and students. And as I mentioned before, with elementary, it's earth science, life science, and physical science that the students have these kits for. Live materials like butterflies, crayfish, plants, and insects, they have their own little pets in the classroom. And the kids love to watch them grow and develop and make great observations. If you haven't had a chance to see that in action, I would definitely encourage it. The kids absolutely love it. At the middle school level, really more like lab experiences that align to science and engineering practices. And this connects to our priority objectives specifically through strong Tier 1 instruction. That's something that's really important for us, and we need to have those resources and materials to make sure that our teachers can deliver that instruction. And so with that said, I'm recommending the ongoing approval of purchasing these curricular resource materials as long as the cost does not increase more than 10% of the current amount, which is listed on this slide.
I move to approve ongoing approval of purchasing the following curricular resource materials as long as the cost does not increase more than 10% of the current amount. ECA science materials at a cost of $78,916 for order 6.
Motion to approve the ongoing approval of purchasing the FOSS science kits, curricular resource materials. As long as the cost does not increase by more than 10% of the current amount, ECA science materials at a cost of $78,916 for order 6 is moved and seconded. Are there any other questions or comments?
One question, is the $78,916 the current amount?
That's the current amount. That's what we paid last year. That will be the amount for this school year for your one of the 3-year contract, and then it'll be reduced the following year because ECA will come out of the equation.
So the ECA portion is the $35,000 you talked about?
Yeah, correct. So that will be reduced in year 2.
Okay, so it'll be seven.
So we
Going in.
the cost that you see there is for year 1, and then year 2 will drop down by about $35,000.
So really, 10% that you're talking about.
Well, it'll never even be an issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's not
just
gonna
wanted
be that close to that.
No, yeah, because you're mentioning 35, so I'm expecting that to drop 35. Anyway.
Correct. Yep.
I think the goal here with this ongoing is not to approve it every single year because we use them every single year.
Yeah, that's
Unless there's all of a sudden increase in the cost of the
Yeah, and I like that you've added that not more than 10%, so you've got that, just in case some new bug comes out that they,
Yeah.
they were put in the kit, that you say, God, we've got to have that bug or that whatever it might be, a bug, plant, whatever it might be.
Right.
Gives you some flexibility to adapt your curriculum and still remain within the parameters of this. And I think that's great, that's very great thinking, so I appreciate it, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item number 7 is our Canvas Learning Management System approval. Mr. Scott Vaughn will address the board.
Right. Presentation 2 is regarding Canvas, the learning management system for the district. May 2020 was when it was originally approved and implemented, really in conjunction, if you remember that thing called COVID, where we had to have an LMS, but really a much needed piece. Canvas, for us, allows us to deliver instruction seamlessly, whether a student is absent or present. They have access to instructional materials. Slide decks are linked in there, notes that students might need when they get home. It helps us post instructional content. It's really a one-stop shop for anything a student needs within the classroom. It can be used to assess student learning, so there's grade passback that happens right within Canvas. Teachers can do audio recordings of feedback of assignments. They can do just handwritten notes, things of that nature. And it just really helps them provide immediate feedback. They don't have to wait 2 days. They can get it right back to kids right away, which is really helpful. In terms of the rationale, the number one thing that I love about Canvas are the tools that are available. Whether it's multimedia video tools, myself and our department, we're using screencasts all the time and embedding them in Canvas for teacher platforms where, short chunk videos that teachers can provide that kids can learn at their own pace, or it's the interactive assignments, collaborative projects that kids can do right within Canvas. They can be assigned within groups, they can be assigned individually. Kids can get different assignments that the whole class do not get, which is really helpful. A second piece is the learning pathways. We know that all of our kids learn at different rates and different speeds, and so there's actually something called the mastery pathways in there, where teachers can set it up, the kids take an assessment, and it'll move them to where they need to go based on their performance and then assessment, which is phenomenal. The third thing is it's a home base. Whether a student has a 504, an IEP, or just needs access to universal notes, they have that ability to access class notes, class assignments, slide decks that are presented within the classroom. You name it, it's there for kids. Whether it's an elementary classroom, the family can see what the kid's schedule is for the day, so they can kind of basically tailor their appointments for their kids around important content areas, which leads me to the last point. It's very transparent for our families and for them to be able to see what's going on in the kids' classroom. It's a really important resource in terms of connecting to our priority objectives. We can make our proficiency scales visible and accessible to our students and families. It helps us deliver strong Tier 1 instruction. And as I mentioned earlier, with the learning pathways, it gives kids access to differentiated learning materials. With that said, we're recommending the ongoing approval of purchasing Canvas as long as the cost is not increased by more than 10%, and that cost currently is $54,000.
I move to approve the ongoing approval of purchasing the following curricular resource as long as the cost does not increase by more than 10% of the current amount. Canvas is a learning management system at a cost of $54,000 for enclosure 7.
Motion to approve the ongoing approval of purchasing Canvas as a learning management system, as long as the cost is not increased by more than 10% of the current amount of $54,000 for enclosure 7. Questions or comments on that?
I may have missed it. How long is this contract?
So this contract is a yearly contract.
This is now
Yes.
annual?
Yep,
Okay, the other question I have, and thank you by the way for putting that 10%.
yeah,
Love that. I remember when we first got Canvas and
Yeah.
there was some pushback from some teachers, and they didn't all embrace its capabilities. How do you feel the teachers are all doing now? Do we
The high
still
school-
have a range?
that's a great question. At the high school level, you really can't walk into many classrooms and not see it being used in real time within the classroom and at home. The same is the case with the middle school level. I would say at the elementary right now, 3-5 does a really strong job of it. K2, there's some area for growth. And what we've done for this year, we're gonna do it in our new teacher training and all of our building PDs, is lay out expectations that we have for all of our teachers, and then also provide them the support. Just to make sure that that is the warehouse that we use for families. They can go there for, archived newsletters, schedules, assignments, because it's really important for us. We tell our kids to fill out their planner, right? Some of them fill it out, some of them don't. At the high school level, they don't even have a planner in some cases. So for parents to be able to check up, they have to be able to see those assignments. So it's really important if something's going home that it's posted to Canvas so families can see it.
Thank you. Yeah, the communication piece with the parents is really.
Makes a world of difference. And nowadays too, with so many different pieces of instructional technology, billions of passwords, we're actually able to put all that through Clever, which basically it syncs PowerSchool to the digital platform, and the Clever sign-on is right on Canvas as well. So that shoots them to any digital app that they need as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's nice.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item 8 is our NWEA benchmark assessment approval. Mr. Scott, will once again address the board.
Okay, so back in 2017, we approved and implemented NWEA as the state-required benchmark assessment tool for K-8. The district, we actually get reimbursed for K-8 costs annually through the benchmark assessment funding grants. So we pay that funding up front, and then later on in the spring, they give us a reimbursement check just for K-8. Last year, we implemented 9th grade NWEA because we felt it was really important to get a finger on the pulse of where our students, how they were doing in math and ELA in the fall, the winter, and the spring. Our high school did a good job of that, and more importantly, as we move into this year, we're really looking forward to teachers doing a great job manipulating that data, using it for instructional grouping, and really getting their hands dirty with it. Teachers use the data in a variety of ways: to plan instruction, personalize learning, create instructional groups, and most importantly, to monitor student growth, and it's also helpful for families to be able to monitor that growth as well. Wide variety of rationale, whether it's personalizing learning for a student, measuring growth, it aligns with the state standards, so when you get that report, it tells you exactly how a kid is doing in specific standards, which is helpful for the teachers and also helpful for families at home, whether they want to say, hey, students, you know, like, I see there's this IXL assignment on fractions, we can go right there and do that. Data-driven instruction, 3 times a year, we're able to get that important data. We're able to tailor in terms of full class instruction, group instruction. It allows for frequent and timely assessments. Most importantly, it supports diverse learning needs of students. There's actually translation available and accommodations for students when they take the test. It helps us connect with the families and communities and let them know where their children are doing. And finally, it complies with state requirements. We are required to give a benchmark assessment K through 8. As I mentioned earlier, it really ties into the mastery of standards and helping our students figure out where they're at with those. It helps us with differentiation, and it also determines the need for Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. If we decide that a kid needs reading intervention and additional support, or a math lab class at the middle school or high school level, NWEA kind of helps us funnel and determine who needs those supports. With that said, we're recommending the ongoing approval of NWEA as the benchmark assessment for the West Bloomfield School District, provided that it does not exceed 10% of the current amount, which is listed here at $35,075.
Okay, we have a motion. Nick?
I move to approve the ongoing approval of purchasing the following benchmark assessment as long as the cost does not increase by more than 10% of the current amount. NWEA math growth for K-9 at a cost of $35,075 per enclosure.
Motion to approve the ongoing approval of purchasing the following benchmark assessment as long as the cost does not increase by 10% of the current amount. NWEA math growth for K-9. I'm thinking dogs, kindergarten through 9, at a cost of $35,070 per enclosure. As per
K-9
second.
That's what the minute, okay, that she was thinking.
Just give up. Are there any additional questions or comments? So, evaluation has changed now for next year, and you can now use your, this benchmark
Yes.
for growth over the step, right?
So teachers can submit that data. We use it for also the state portion of our data, like that localized benchmark assessment.
So, for some reason, I always thought, in my head, it was always more than that, the cost when we do it 3 times a year.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I
considering
always
we're able to
thought
do
it
that
was
with that many students.
When we did, when we did 3 times a year.
Just a quick clarifying, so I understand, so that we get reimbursed for basically about 90% of this, not the full amount.
So it's interesting that you say that because you're thinking that 9th grade piece, right?
Right.
Typically, the reimbursement check that they give us covers even our 9th graders. Because what they do is they just cut us a check, right? And like we take that like number of seat licenses that we get, we apply it, and it usually covers the cost.
So having said that, even if the price went up more than 10%, would we still be 100%?
It gets close. I
reimbursed?
believe that typical reimbursement is like somewhere right around this cost here. It gets tight, but I don't imagine the NWEA is ever going to go up because it's directly aligned with that state funding. So
If the funding doesn't go up, they're not gonna, I was just,
exactly.
because I just didn't know if like putting that 10% is tying our hands unnecessarily,
Right.
where we might be better off
The
to
only
say,
thing-
as long as it doesn't exceed the reimbursement rate
Right.
to K-8, but
The only thing I could see is if we decide that we want to expand it to our 10th graders to provide more robust assessment at that level.
now you're talking,
Yeah.
okay, so that's, makes sense, okay, thank you.
So, this is not a line item of grants that we're last budgeting that,
Thank God.
okay, so, I don't remember it being. Anyways, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Last one for Scott.
I'm sorry.
Agenda item number 9 is the elementary literacy curricular resource pilot materials approval. Mr. Scott.
Last but not least, this one I'm really excited about. This is going to be a great journey for our teachers and our buildings, our kids and our families. In 2019, the board approved Lucy Calkins as the curricular resource for K-5 elementary literacy. Last school year, we had a very large committee. Names are listed right here. We had parents, reading interventionists, classroom teachers, building principals, literacy coaches, and they really embarked on a very detailed phase to determine how do we move forward. They looked at data, they looked at survey data, achievement data, they looked at over 15 different resources that are out there that other school districts are using. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but it's been a really great journey so far, and I can't wait to see what it looks like this year when we pilot. At the end of that process, the team, when they looked at the data, one of the things they noticed is that since we implemented Lucy, our achievement data has been pretty stagnant. We have not seen the growth that we wanna see. There's a variety of theories for that. You can read a lot of articles and listen to a lot of different podcasts that will tell you why. But at the end, when they started to investigate resources, 2 of them really came to the surface that were highly intriguing. One is American Reading Company, our core curricular resource, and I'll talk a little bit more about the ins and outs of that in a second. But 12 teachers are gonna pilot that. Every grade level across the district will be covered, and then 19 teachers are gonna pilot EL education. 19 at EL education is because it's a little bit of a cheaper resource in terms of what it costs. 12 with our core because it's more expensive. And then the remaining teachers are going to continue using Lucy Calkins for those remaining grade levels. So we have 3 different pieces going. The idea is we want to make sure that all the grade levels have an opportunity to experience all 3 different resources. They'll continue to collaborate and process and debrief on the quality of each of those resources. The goal is at the end of the year we would land on one that's the best fit for our school district. Just to tell you a little bit about the process that committee took, it started way back in January. We have a curricular resource equity rubric. They use that to score our current resource. They scored it by looking at NWEA, MSTEP, comparison data from across the county, survey data from families, students, and teachers. And after looking at that survey, the equity rubric score, we could clearly see that the scores weren't where we wanted them to be. It wasn't a resource that was hitting all the marks for everything that we wanted. So then we started to investigate, read articles, look at research, watch some videos, analyze the essentials of literacy, and the team created a list of non-negotiables that they wanted in a resource, which we'll look at in a second. And then they began to break down every one of those. All the companies came in, we had boxes and boxes of resources, digital platforms, and they used that list of non-negotiables to evaluate each one of those ELA resources. They continued that into March, where they actually did 3 to 5 site visits, looking at 3 to 5 of the resources that they were interested in. And in the end, our core and EL education were the 2 that really struck a chord with everybody in the group. So this is a little bit of a picture of the process the team used to get to their non-negotiables. Those non-negotiables were created as a team, the rubric was created as a team, and they scored those 12 resources and landed on, as I mentioned, those 2. The great thing is that 35J is a literacy grant that will pay for these pilot materials. It pays for literacy training, including letters training, and these curricular materials and the training that goes along with it. So it doesn't come at a cost out of our general fund, and it helps us get a head start on what's going to be the best resource. Both our core and EL education are so different than Lucy in the sense that it really focuses on knowledge building. You'll see a lot of research out there right now where students, they may be great readers, but if they don't have the knowledge base and the background information, it doesn't matter. Like, as a baseball player, I could probably be a good reader, not a good reader, and read something about baseball and do well on the achievement test. Whereas if you don't have any background information on baseball, but you're a great reader, your scores are going to be a little bit lower just because of that knowledge base. So both of these resources really work on building students' knowledge about the world in social studies and in science. They both meet ELA standards in terms of what it means to really break down a text, whether it's a narrative or a nonfiction text. and then also how to write well. They both have a strong phonics and comprehension set of resources to help teachers, and they both, more importantly, have diverse, high-quality text sets. So when we pilot these resources, all the physical materials that they give us, we get to keep. And if we decide that our core is the one that we want to pursue, all those texts go to our classroom libraries. So it's really a win-win there. You might wonder a little bit about the difference in cost and why we're doing less teachers with our core and more with EL education. EL education is an open resource. So what that means is educators and researchers from across the country pour into that platform so that teachers have the best materials needed. It's a nonprofit. Whereas our core is not a nonprofit, not an open resource. They also have an independent reading literacy assessment digital platform that has formative assessment. It's a really awesome product that helps teachers. So they have their benchmark assessments in the fall, the winter, and the spring. In between that time, there's these formative diagnostics that help teachers get real-time, immediate feedback on where kids are at with their knowledge base, their vocabulary, and their phonics. So that piece right there increases the cost a little bit more, in addition to the fact that it's now an open source. Both of these highly connect to us providing strong Tier 1 instruction. As I mentioned earlier, our literacy scores have improved in terms of growth, but they're not where we want them to be, and we truly believe that a rich resource like our core or EL education is going to help us take the next step in supporting each one of our students. So with that said, we're recommending the approval of purchasing EL education at the cost of $37,287, our core at a cost of $62,450, both of which will be covered by our 35J grant to pilot for 1 year.
I move to approve the elementary literacy curricular resource materials to pilot for 1 year EL education for $37,287 and ARC American Reading Company for $62,450 per enclosure.
Motion to approve the elementary literacy curricular resource materials to pilot for 1 year, EL education for $37,287, and ARC for $62,450 per enclosure nine, has been moved and seconded. Are there any additional questions or comments? I will make one comment, because the curriculum council, both Ashley and I were there when the majority, a large part of the team that had been doing this work presented to curriculum council, and there was almost a sense of gleeful ecstaticness of finding a resource and even saying which ones they wanted to pilot and offer to be the teacher that took it on for a year, because that's a huge commitment for teachers to read their whole curriculum and want to pilot something that they might only use for a year, but there was genuine excitement, and I really think that they felt that the process was very valuable and that they really are making a solid decision with these two resources. My one question is are these special pricing for pilots, or is this gonna be like, do they give you special pricing for the pilot, or?
Yeah, so I would say in both cases, they reduced some costs for us because it was a pilot.
Okay.
I think if you look at the difference in cost, you're gonna get a good sense of like, our core is gonna be significantly more expensive than EL education. As we go through the pilot, we're gonna really have to dig down deep and examine, does our core bring that much more to the table to move forward with it? But we all know that investing in our kids' literacy skills is imperative, right? So we gotta pick the best
I just
resource.
wasn't sure. Deborah, do you have your answer?
I did. Excited, right? Excited because, when you look at our state assessments for our children under literacy, the scores aren't great. And I think that if we don't know that, they're not great, right? So I'm excited that we're taking a different path, but my question then becomes, how do we take the path? I didn't see that in here. So we know that we have pilot A and pilot B.
Yep,
And then some of the children will then remain within the Lucy columns.
correct.
So how do we choose which students then become in pilot A, pilot B? And then what are the benchmarks that take us out to say it was successful? Do we use our, no, and I didn't see that here, because I think it's great. And then do we let families know? Because again, some kids will be under Lucy Calkins, which there's so much talk about Lucy that doesn't work for our population of children based on, again, the research. So how do we communicate that then to parents and say, hey, your kid is gonna be in pilot A or pilot B, or your kid is gonna remain in Lucy Hawkins, and how do we do that? Because some of our kids are really falling below.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, you probably don't know this, but last year during open house, all of our elementary teachers talked to parents about like, hey, you know, you probably heard some things about Lucy. Just so you know, we're evaluating our curricular resource, and during this evaluation, we'll determine pilots. So those conversations were had. And what's going to happen in the fall at open house is teachers will communicate to parents, this is the resource that we're using for this year. And then we'll continue to notify the community on how things are going with those pilots so that they're aware. In terms of benchmarks, the beautiful thing is both of these line up with NWEA extremely well, right? So we're gonna be able to see from the fall to the winter what types of gains we make in all three of those resources really to measure that. I think our core phonics survey and our IDA, which is an independent decoding assessment, those two, in addition to NWEA, is going to give us a good sense of the growth that kids make in those two resources. And then we're always going to have our state assessment towards the end as well.
Well, can I just go just one little further? Because if we look at from the NWA perspective, if we have those children who are scoring below us, right, that are totally not proficient in literacy, and say, hey, you're gonna take a pilot, so we have the NWA score, hopefully they go up, but they're still not proficient. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out again, then how do we then choose those students, or are we choosing those students, are they at random? And how do we then, make an intentional effort for those that are really not proficient in reading? Because we can certainly tease those students out, so we can give them that extra help that they need in one of these pilots, maybe that extra help because of the problems with Lucy Hawkins. And maybe you guys don't know about what the problems are, maybe it's that you want to tell, but I'm so excited about it. But how do we, again, identify those students, and will there be some intentional way to do that?
Yeah, so as you know, I'm sure you know that when elementary students go to a building, they're attached to a teacher.
Right.
And that teacher delivers all the instructions. So we already have a list of teachers that have volunteered to raise their hand to lead these pilots, like Stacey alluded to. So that curriculum committee that met, they identify like, hey, they send a communication out to all staff, who's interested in piloting. And so from there, those people that raise their hands are the ones that are gonna be leading those pilots for all three areas, right? So the kids that are in those teachers' classrooms are the ones that are gonna be going through that experience, whether it's EL education or our core. In regards to your question about how do we support all of our kids, because we have the NWEA, because we have the core phonics survey and the IDA survey, all that data is used to figure out how do we differentiate within the classroom with small group reading instruction, how do we provide reading interventionists for kids that really need it to accelerate their growth. That's gonna happen across the board for all kids, regardless of what classroom they're in or what pilot they're going through.
I think because they're already identified or will be identified as tier 2 or 3. So that, regardless, that's when we get special services.
Yep.
More intense services.
Yep.
So I think that's good.
Yeah, so we'll look forward, will we see that benchmarking then come through? Because that would be interesting.
We're gonna definitely
data for us,
yeah, we'll keep you updated on the progress of both of the pilots and how it's going.
It'd be great to compare to the Lucy Hawkins as well. We all know that again is a sore spot, curriculum education, but it'd be good to look at that too, and again, maybe help some of the most struggling learners.
Yeah.
So I have a two-pronged question. The first part is, so you've got 31 teachers that are gonna be pilot teachers. How many more teachers are gonna be in Lucy Hawkins?
There's about 50 elementary classroom teachers.
Oh, okay, so it's gonna be about a third roughly.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Give or, yeah, because the one only has 12, so I get it, okay. And then, so in your perfect world, at the end of this year, would you be looking to abandon Lucy Hawkins and adopt a new curriculum? Is that where we're going with this? Is to totally get rid of it, or to what level of Lucy Hawkins will
The
remain?
goal is, as we go through these the two pilots and then continue with Lucy this year, the goal is to land on one resource. resource, so that when we move into the school, the 25-26 school year, there's one resource that everybody's using K-5. Whether that's our core EL education or Lucy Hawkins remains to be determined, but.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, if we wanted to do, I think.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah, and we have not seen anything really great come out of Lucy Hawkins. It was a lot of hype and a lot of disappointment. That's what I've seen. And I hope we don't get pushback from parents that say, but I want my kid to have this other opportunity.
I think the wonderful thing about that is the more we communicate with families about the process and the more we look at the data and see what it's saying, whether it's student engagement data, staff satisfaction data, or actually the achievement data, it's going to really speak volumes.
Thank you.
Yep.
You guys have made sense of it. Like the new decodable taxes, they would work with any program.
Oh yeah.
So I'm saying that there are things, investments that we've done that would also be layered in.
Yeah, whether it be our FMP guided reading kits, our
All
decodable
that is
text,
also
or small,
part of.
yeah. All those purchases that we've made over the years for small group construction are fantastic.
Okay.
They were supplemental purchases to fill gaps that
Which
we
could be,
see.
but it could be used with any program.
Exactly. Yep.
Especially for tier two.
Yep. And I'll say this too, one resource does not fix all. There's no silver bullet when it comes to literacy instruction.
Not every kid learns the same way. My goodness.
Exactly. Teachers have to be well informed of their standards, well informed of what the research says, and then plan really well, and then put that into practice. And then, like you said, cater to the learners and their needs.
Okay, good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And please thank the team. I know that they spend a lot of time outside the school day looking at all of that.
Amy Quinn's waiting for my text. She's chopping it.
I'm surprised your phone hasn't been blowing up.
I know.
So item number 10 on our agenda is our intergovernmental agreement for LIGHTCAST approval. Superintendent Dr. Basil.
So I brought this at the previous board meeting, that Oakland Schools is partnering with LIGHTCAST and alumni pathways. Basically what this will do is it will give us graduate post-secondary information on students in terms of career pathways, job titles that are students own, salaries, and that type of data that will help us, prepare our students for post-secondary careers and education as it moves. This agreement is a consortium agreement between the 28 districts and Oakland schools. LIGHTCAST does not sell our data, so there's data agreements in terms of protecting students' data. There's no cost to the district. The cost to Oakland schools is roughly $35,000 to $40,000 per year that's covered through a vocational grant on their part. So again, they'll provide us some data that will further help us with the the post-secondary experience at the K-12 level. So we are looking for approval so we can join this consortium.
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement for alumni pathways for employment outcomes for enclosure 10.
Motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement for alumni pathways for employment outcomes for enclosure 10 has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments?
So it doesn't cost us anything, and it helps the district.
Yeah. Yes.
You're welcome.
That's how it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item number 11 is our Westbrook High School pool DUCTWORK replacement review. Mr. Jamie Stottlemyre, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening. So our existing fabric ductwork that wraps around the entire natatorium split apart and a large section of it failed and collapsed. So we definitely need to replace it. Keeping in mind that it is 26 years old and a fabric ductwork typically has a warranty of about 10 years. So it's definitely served its life cycle there. So we worked with TMP and Peter Basso to design a replacement for that. We opened up bids last Thursday. We received 5 bids. 3 of them were in the $90,000 range. One of them, the second to low, was $70,767, and our low bidder from Goyette Mechanical was $69,500. So at the next board meeting, we are going to bring a request to approve GOYA to replace the pool ductwork. We have been working with Eric Pierce on timing, and it looks like we'll be able to install that during the day in October. The contractor will just clean up each time, sorry.
I see all 5 bids, one of them,
Has clarifications?
Clarifications.
Yes.
System.
They basically have a page of, this is our bid, but this has to happen, this has to happen, we're not doing it here, we won't do it on a Wednesday, you know, whatever. It's just a long list of qualifications and clarifications that go along with their price.
Okay.
So all of the bids have been uploaded into board docs, and you have all that information.
So we just redid the whole editorial not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
This didn't get done,
No.
They didn't do all the guts.
and then they did some, but not all.
They did not do the guts, they had to do that, it was lighting, the pool itself, the surfacing of the pool, the tile, I'm trying to remember everything. Yeah, they did the lightings, but they didn't do a lot of, they had to do something underneath, because there was some flooding. and
There was a drainage.
But it was not
Wasn't
this.
done. So
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what else didn't get done that could come down the pipe, you know, in the next couple of years? And I think that, you know, while you're doing this, also should be explored to make sure that we're not, you know, it's not something that won't be accessible once this is done, and, you know, the domino effect.
We will. We have a budgeted amount in the bond for general repairs in the high school, so we're going to take a holistic approach at the entire building and look at that pool of money and make those repairs. This particular project, though, because it is it's an allowable expense on the sinking fund, we are going to use a sinking fund for that. And we're currently, our balance, just so you know, of our sinking fund as of today is $3,561,727. So we do have the money in the sinking fund to make this repair.
Okay, forgive me, because I don't really know what pool ductwork is, but can our swim team be using the pool?
Yes, so currently, yes, so what's gonna happen, currently, a large majority of the ductwork is actually gone. It ripped apart and fell down, so they've taken it out. So right now, the air is just kind of blasting into the natatorium. Once this ductwork goes in, the contractor would work during the day, and then they would clean up and have the deck completely safe for the swim teams to use it at night. So like I said, we're working with Eric Pierce on the exact timing of that, but it looks like it'll be October.
Carol, I remember what else they missed, it was the cast panels on the roof that was also done.
Yeah, that
It was all that.
But I guess that's my point, is if you've got this duct, and then you've got ceiling above it, is there anything that could be looked at in that ceiling that should be done? Because once this duct is in place,
Right.
it ain't coming back down.
Well, the
It's
fabric
got-
duct in
it's like-
particular
Right.
hangs off L brackets off the
I
wall, so there is
understand.
some space
It's a-
between
but
the
it-
duct and
but
the
still,
ceiling.
It's
Yeah.
an access
Well,
issue that makes it easier, and if it needs to be done in the short period of time,
Right.
this is the time to do it.
Well, with every project, we'll analyze everything around it to make sure.
So before this actually is done, even though we approve it, we'll be able to say, we've looked at it and we're good.
This approval is just to get the material ordered and get going and so we're ready for the install.
And he's always in our building anyhow, so I'm sure
Right.
he looks.
Has we ever worked with FOSS mechanically?
Arch has, and they're comfortable with using them. Yeah, they are.
Very reliable, very long.
I mean, just like Fessler did our playgrounds, sometimes we'll get better pricing from the Flint contractors. They're a little bit more desperate for work up there, so.
Okay, all right. Well, you're bringing that up.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'll have photos.
Agenda item number 12 is our NEOLA policy special update 1009, June 2024, first read. Dr. Dowsey, the policy committee will bless the board. Although you're going to bring more because there's more information that came through.
Yeah, there's recently more information, so we did attach, an e-blast from Truman. There is currently an injunction from the U.S. District Court in Kansas with regards to the Title IX requirements. There are basically blocking, there's an injunction that's blocking the regulations from being enforced at schools where there's members of Moms for Liberty at those particular schools. As of late last week, there were 4 of our schools on the list: Bretchko, Scotch, West Bloomfield Middle School, West Bloomfield High School. Since then, they've added Chico, Doherty, Lake Opportunity Center, and Transitions. Okay? So basically,
Who's that?
Oakland Early College is the only one.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
sure
sure
it's
it's
coming.
coming.
I'm sure they'll be showing eventually. So what that means is the board has two options, really. You know, there's, because of the injunction, it's the OCR, the Office of Civil Rights, has said if your school is listed, they will then hold you accountable to the 2020 Title IX regulations, okay? So districts, though, the injunction at the same time, so what districts can do, they can say, okay, we're covered under the injunction, we're gonna put a pause on approving the 2024 regulations until this is settled with the courts, and then continue with implementing the 2020 regulations. Okay? And on the flip side, districts can implement the 2024 regulations and proceed, but the odd part is OCR is still gonna hold you accountable to the 2020 regulations. So that's a part that's, now, again, this injunction doesn't prohibit the board from taking action on the 2024 regulations. The fact that all of our schools have been covered, you know, this is board policy, so I'll stay in my lane on this one. But my recommendation would just be, we do the first read today, put a pause, right, until this is settled through the courts. And then if we need to bring it, now I would still recommend our staff, our Title IX coordinators to be trained on both, because if something switches, right, the injunction is lifted, we're going to have to then from that point forward, we gotta go back to the 2024 regulations, and the board would then have to take action on this NEOLA policy. So you really have two choices. We can put a pause, because now the majority of our schools have been listed, and my guess is as soon as they realize they missed one, somebody has been very diligent in getting the 8 listed, the group, not somebody, but the group has. And so we can do that, or we can proceed with the it's really, this is a board decision.
So this brings in the only school, I concur with you to do the first reading and probably put a pause on it, having sat through all this. My question comes in because OEC is a unicorn, and that where, you know, we have our policy, but then if there was a Title IX issue, OCC would also potentially be involved, and maybe they have adopted or will adopt the 2024, so even if we have the 20 and they have the 2024, we're still covered.
I think
No matter what
based
happens on
on
that
based on what it says in dual enrollment and stuff, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's my thing, so I think and I think that would be something is just to find out what OCC has done or plans to do with it, just to make sure that we're monitoring that, but I think that you're on the right path with, let's just first reading and then hit the pause, but this is a nightmare. But I do think that, I agree with you that the staff probably should go ahead with their training and say,
Yeah.
because if the injunction's lifted, it goes into effect like that.
Yeah, so like Eric Whitney and Sonia James who covered that, I think are signed up for training or have been, right? And then.
This week.
This week.
Mine's this week.
This
You're,
week.
you already did this.
I would, my recommendation would be to continue on with that training. And the same thing, any administrators that you plan on training, train them as well. And then, once this is settled, the worst case scenario is they had training that, regulations that haven't or have been implemented, and I don't have a crystal ball to how this is gonna play out. Or when, yeah, so, it was a little, when I saw half of the schools, I thought, okay, well, we still have to implement the 2024, but then literally all of the campus schools were listed, and changed the two a little bit.
I was just gonna say that I also agree with reading through it, doing the training, being ready to go either way when the courts have decided. I think that's the right thing to do.
I do have one request.
Yes.
There are some, options in there that it says to have your attorneys look at. not NEOLA, but actual attorneys, and I can send you a list, because I have them highlighted, that I would actually like, True Homes to look at. If it ever comes back to the board, I just think, I could do it close to them, but at some point, I wouldn't be ready to approve it unless, our legal looks at some of those options.
And it's said,
Mhm.
it's said in
Just
that.
send me the list,
I'll
I'll
send
send me
you-
the copy with the.
Just so that
highlight.
there's, and I don't wanna spend the money if we don't have to, but
When
I
we
do,
get closer.
yeah, when we get closer, I do want, their input, because some of them I don't know if I would agree to, unless they say. it's okay. Alright. Anybody else, Deborah?
What you said. What you said. But also just a question. So Eric and Sonia go through the training, and they certainly have that information under their, then what happens? How does this information then, how does the district understand this information? You know, is there, how do we make everyone aware of what's going on? Or do we, or, I mean, you know, it's kind of hard to aware.
I'm gonna let Aaron.
I can tell you, in the 2024 final rule, there are 3 layers of information that we have to put out as an organization. So the first layer is what's called for all staff. So once this policy is adopted by the board, and we have that in alignment, we are obligated to notify all of our staff about what sexual harassment is, their obligation to report that. We have that covered because we do something called vector training.
Yeah.
Every year, it used to be called Safe Schools, it's your bloodborne pathogens, and we do it through that system. So Vector has updated their training. We've held that back because we didn't know if we wanted to push out the 2020 final rule or the 2024 rule, so we were waiting a little bit for discussion from the board tonight. So that's a piece that gets out to all of our staff in the entire district about their obligation to recognize, identify, and report sexual harassment.
Yes.
The second layer of training is for people that are involved in the process, that may be investigating issues, that may be responsible for carrying out Title IX policies. That includes our school administrators, principals, assistant principals, directors, things like that. And then the third level is for our Title IX coordinators, which is Sonia and myself. So as we roll that out, that's how that will work. We have Troon scheduled out to come and do that training with our administrators, our people that might be investigators and so on. It's not, with the 2024 rule, there are some changes to it that actually make it, I don't know that as we get ready to move forward and that because it's coming in sort of bits and pieces and all kind of a little bit scattered, in my opinion, how that's being implemented across the country. It's not imperative that we have all of those people trained right immediately because in the 2024 rules, Sonia and I can be the coordinators and the investigators. So there are changes in the 2024 rules that allow us to be able to do that. So we have those roles covered if we need them. Okay. And so I feel very confident in that we will be just fine any way that this sort of shakes out, because in the 2020 rule, Sonia and I could not be the Title IX coordinator and an investigator. Those had to be different people. Decision maker had to be a different person, but that has changed under the 2024. So long story short, I think we're in very good shape. Any which way this goes, I think we're okay.
And that's because you and Sonia have had the training, so you can really activate those
That's
roles that we usually would have to have separately.
Yes.
Right.
Should that be needed in the interim?
Right.
Because it's only one building right now, obviously, right, that would be under that 2024 rule.
Right.
I think, it's not, okay, it would be minimal. We don't have Title IX reports every day. Like, it's not something that we experience a lot of. And I feel very confident that with those rules, because we will have the training and because the way the rules are defined under the 2024 rule, we will be okay.
Okay, so even if we hold right now, we're still gonna be okay, because that was really my
100%,
question. If we hold,
absolutely we will.
You know, what are we facing as far as a risk?
Yeah.
Continuing the same.
We'll use the
We're already
2020
the same.
rules, which everybody's already,
Right.
we've already done that training before. And
we'll hold back on that training until we decide, right?
we can do the
Still get
2024
2020.
training anytime. Like, we can still do it, we can move forward.
But they
We
still
have that
get the
scheduled in
2020.
September for our administrators.
We'll,
We can.
They still do
So
2020.
we would
They
still
do
do
it.
teachers
It's
because
like
it's 2020.
every year they watch the videos and they do
Yeah.
it. It's like HR stuff.
The administrators have to have a little bit more involved training
Right.
than the teachers.
Yeah.
So the teachers, we wouldn't turn on the video one until we had to, right, Eric?
We're doing, okay, so if the decision is to hold, then we will still put out our training through Vector Safe Schools,
Right.
but it will be the 2020 module.
Right.
Meaning, that's just awareness. It's just an awareness level. And that's for everybody in the city.
People that have to report, designated report.
Here's what to look for, here's how it's defined,
And
things
then
like
in the 2024, we'll turn on that train.
Correct.
Got it, okay. This will be covered. Okay.
We're ready for it.
So this is still the first review.
Yes.
Yeah. This is gonna be the first, we're just gonna, I'm not gonna put it on the agenda for the next.
No,
And it never has to come back to the policy committee. That's all I'm gonna say. Please.
No,
I'll be gone by then.
I think it's gonna take a long time, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It
Yes,
might.
I think this is not gonna happen. There's too much.
Should I have by some?
I don't know, I think it's, I think a lot of this is political.
No.
Alright, well, we're gonna keep on, we don't need to do anything. Alright, item number 13 is our MASB Delegate Assembly Designate Review. And so MASB's Delegate Assembly, it's our annual, from the annual conference, is Thursday, October 24th at 7 in the Lansing Center in downtown Lansing. Just so you know, any board members may attend the Delegate Assembly, but we need to select a voting delegate, and probably, I think it's good to also have an alternate. Carol is gonna be there with Open Schools and has reached out and offered to be the delegate, and if any, or unless anyone else wants to, and then I think we should also make an alternate if you think it's, you've never missed one, I don't think.
I'm gonna be there as well.
You want to be,
Yeah.
okay.
This is my parting gift to you guys.
You drugged me along last time.
Come on.
So we'll make Carol and Julie as the alternate.
It was the best night of my life.
We vote on
I
it
think
next
it's
time.
with the.
So I'm gonna select it,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put on the 19th with Carol and Julie as the alternate. And we'll act on it in our August business meeting on the 19th. Okay, agenda item number 14 is a consent agenda, mainly because people are being hired, so go ahead and motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda items per enclosures 14A, B, and C.
Do we have a
I,
second?
okay. I shouldn't wait to be called on anymore.
I pointed. The motion to approve the following consent agenda items per enclosures 14A through C has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 7-0. Good for the order. We all know about
Family fun night.
family fun night.
Oh, what is family fun night?
It's August 29th. Come on down, bring your family, bring the kids. Bounce houses, food, fun, face
So
painting,
it's a Thursday morning.
military.
I heard
Get the
people
dog
don't
tank.
take this year.
Absolutely, I'm bringing my tutu. I did it before, I'll do it again.
I
That's what everybody wants to see. Actually,
This I want a picture of.
the dunk tank schedule is already full.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The teacher stepped up.
I may not remember the exact date, but the
It's
19th
hot weather,
school board meeting, I'll ask you.
Yes, it is true.
Exactly.
Yeah, the one that's ready. Yes.
They're fools. Okay. That's always great. And then,
95.5 can be there too. I
Oh,
got
that's
it
fun.
confirmed.
Is that later?
And there might be a surprise.
Oh, you're going to come take it?
Surprise.
That's a surprise?
Yes, it's- no, bigger than even me being in it.
You alluded to that on the slab.
I
That there's
did.
some kind of a.
You have to come down to see.
No.
Right?
Notice that something like this. Okay, that's it, then we are adjourned, it is 7:15.
Julie's just gonna.